Good evening all, and welcome back to Paranoia Files. Tonight we venture into the darkest corners of Washington state with 8 of the most disturbing true crime stories ever documented. These accounts are not fabricated tales or sensationalized headlines, but the harrowing experiences of real people whose lives intersected with unimaginable evil. Each story pulls back the veil on crimes that continue to haunt investigators and survivors alike. From mysterious disappearances that defy all logic to the calculated cruelty of those who hide in plain sight. Every detail you are about to hear has been carefully verified through police reports, survivor testimonies, and investigative records, ensuring that the integrity of these accounts remains intact, while certain names and identifying details have been altered to protect the privacy of victims and their families. If you have not yet subscribed to Paranoia Files, I invite you to join our community dedicated to uncovering the truth behind the most chilling cases. Activate the notification bell so you are alerted the moment we share a new investigation into the unexplained and the unforgivable. After you have heard these stories, share your thoughts in the comments below and let me know which case affected you the most, or if you have ever encountered something similarly disturbing in Washington state or beyond. About 3 years ago, my younger sister Jennifer Martinez disappeared without a trace from Lakewood, Washington. She was 29 years old at the time. I was 33. We had grown up together in the same modest house on the south side of town, sharing a bedroom until I left for college when Jennifer was just 14. Even after I moved out and started my own life, we remained incredibly close. We spoke on the phone at least 3 times a week, texted nearly every day, and made it a point to meet for coffee every Sunday morning at the little shop near her apartment. Jennifer was not the type of person who simply vanished. She was responsible, organized, meticulous about keeping in touch. She worked as a barista at a local coffee shop called Roasters on Pacific Avenue, and she had been attending classes at Tacoma Community College for 2 years, working toward a nursing degree. Everyone who knew her described her the same way. Dependable, warm, always smiling, the kind of person who remembered your birthday and asked about your family. She had goals, plans, a future she talked about constantly. She wanted to work in pediatric care. She wanted to help children. That was Jennifer. It was a Tuesday evening in late March when everything changed. Jennifer had finished her shift at Roasters at 6 in the evening. I know this because her manager confirmed it with the police later. She clocked out at exactly 6:03, said goodbye to her co-workers, and walked to her car in the employee parking lot behind the building. Security footage from the coffee shop shows her getting into her silver Honda Civic, checking her phone, and pulling out of the lot at 6:07. She texted me at 6:15. The message said she was stopping at the Safeway on Bridgeport Way to pick up groceries for the week, and she asked if I wanted to come over for dinner on Thursday. I replied saying yes, and I asked her to grab me a bottle of that wine she liked. She sent back a smiley face emoji. That was the last time I ever heard from her. When Jennifer did not respond to my follow-up text later that evening, I did not think much of it at first. She was probably tired from work, probably cooking dinner, probably getting absorbed in one of those crime documentaries she loved to watch. But when I called her at 9 and the phone went straight to voicemail, I started to feel uneasy. Jennifer always answered my calls, or at least called me back within an hour. I tried again at 10. Still nothing. By 11, I was pacing my living room, debating whether I was overreacting. I decided to wait until morning. I told myself she had probably fallen asleep early, that her phone had died, that there was a reasonable explanation. But sleep did not come easily that night. The next morning, I called her at 7. No answer. I called her work and they said she had not shown up for her opening shift at 6, which was extremely unlike her. She had never missed a shift without calling in advance. That was when I knew something was wrong. I drove to her apartment immediately, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. When I arrived, her car was not in the parking lot. I knocked on her door for 5 minutes, then called the apartment manager to let me in. The apartment was exactly as she had left it the day before. Her bed was made. Her nursing textbooks were stacked neatly on the kitchen table. A coffee mug sat in the sink. Everything was normal except Jennifer was not there. I called the police. The officer who took my report was polite but not particularly concerned. He explained that Jennifer was an adult, that she had only been out of contact for less than 24 hours, that people sometimes needed space or went on spontaneous trips. I wanted to scream at him that he did not know my sister, that Jennifer would never do that, but I kept my composure and insisted he file the report anyway. He did, reluctantly. Then I drove to the Safeway on Bridgeport Way, the store Jennifer said she was going to. I walked through the parking lot searching for her silver Civic. I found it in the third row, parked near a light post. My heart stopped. I called the police again. When the officers arrived and searched the car, they found her purse on the passenger seat. Her wallet was inside, along with her phone, her keys, and her employee badge from Roasters. There were no signs of a struggle. The doors were locked. Everything looked completely normal except that Jennifer was gone. The police reviewed the security footage from the Safeway. What they found made no sense. The footage showed Jennifer entering the store at 6:23 in the evening. She grabbed a shopping cart and began walking through the aisles, selecting items and placing them in the cart. Bread, milk, vegetables, pasta, the wine I had asked for. At 6:41, she was in the cereal aisle reaching for a box on the top shelf. Then suddenly she stopped. She stood completely still for several seconds, staring at nothing. Then she released the shopping cart, turned, and walked quickly toward the exit. Her expression was blank, distant, as though she were in some kind of trance. She walked out through the automatic doors and disappeared from view. The shopping cart was later found abandoned in the cereal aisle, half filled with groceries. Jennifer never came back for it. The police canvassed the area, interviewed the store employees, reviewed additional security footage from surrounding businesses. No one remembered seeing Jennifer outside the store. No one saw her get into another vehicle. No one saw her walking away. She simply walked out of the Safeway and vanished. The last confirmed sighting of my sister was at 6:42 in the evening on a Tuesday in March, walking out of a grocery store in Lakewood, Washington, looking like she was sleepwalking. The police launched a missing persons investigation. Search parties were organized. Volunteers combed the neighborhoods surrounding the Safeway, the wooded areas near her apartment, the trails around Lake Steilacoom. Flyers with her photograph were posted on every street corner, every bulletin board, every storefront window. The local news ran stories about her disappearance. Tips poured in, but none of them led anywhere. People claimed they saw her in Seattle, in Portland, in Vancouver. Every lead turned out to be a dead end. 3 weeks after Jennifer disappeared, I was walking one of the trails near American Lake, a route Jennifer and I used to hike together on weekends. I was not searching for clues or evidence. I was just walking because I could not sit still anymore, because doing nothing felt like giving up. About 2 miles into the trail, I saw something blue caught on a low-hanging branch. I walked closer and realized it was a jacket, Jennifer's jacket. I recognized it immediately. It was a light blue windbreaker she had bought the previous fall, with a small tear in the left sleeve from when she snagged it on a fence. I pulled it off the branch with trembling hands and checked the pockets. Empty. I called the police and they came to collect it as evidence. They searched the entire area surrounding the trail for days. They brought in search dogs, helicopters, dive teams for the lake. They found nothing. No other clothing, no signs of a struggle, no body. Just the jacket hanging on a branch miles away from where her car had been found. miles away from any logical path she would have taken. The investigators could not explain how the jacket ended up there. Jennifer's car had been found at the Safeway. The trail where I found the jacket was over 10 miles away from that location. There was no evidence that she had walked there. No witnesses reported seeing her in that area. No security cameras captured her image. It was as though the jacket had simply materialized on that branch, placed there by someone or something unknown. The police questioned whether someone had taken her, whether she had been abducted from the parking lot after leaving the store. But there was no evidence of an abduction. No witnesses, no suspicious vehicles, no forensic evidence in or around her car. The case went cold within months. It has been 5 years now since Jennifer disappeared. 5 years of searching, of waiting, of hoping for answers that never come. The police tell me that without evidence of foul play, without a body, without witnesses, there is little they can do. The case remains open, but it is no longer active. I have not given up. I walk those trails every weekend, the same trails Jennifer and I used to hike together. I walk them in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening. I walk them in every season, in every kind of weather. I call her name into the trees, into the wind, into the silence. I leave notes at the trailhead asking anyone who knows anything to come forward to help me bring my sister home. Sometimes, other hikers stop and ask me what I am doing. I tell them I am looking for someone. I tell them her name. Most of them nod sympathetically and continue on their way. A few have joined me for a while, walking beside me in silence, helping me search even though they do not know what we are searching for. I have theories, of course. Everyone does. Maybe Jennifer had some kind of medical episode in the store, something that caused her to become disoriented and confused. Maybe she wandered away and got lost. Maybe she had a breakdown, a psychotic episode, something that made her leave her life behind. But none of those theories explain the jacket. None of them explain why her car was still in the parking lot, locked, with all her belongings inside. None of them explain why there has been no activity on her bank accounts, no use of her credit cards, no phone records, no digital footprint of any kind. It is as though she ceased to exist the moment she walked out of that grocery store. I have also considered darker possibilities. That someone took her. That someone followed her into the parking lot, forced her into another vehicle, and drove away before anyone noticed. That she is out there somewhere, held against her will or worse, but the police found no evidence of that either. No suspicious vehicles, no witnesses, no forensic evidence. Whoever took her, if someone did, left no trace. The case has been featured on several true crime podcasts and television shows over the years. People from all over the country have reached out with tips, theories, and supposed sightings. None of them have led to Jennifer. None of them have brought her home. I still live in Lakewood. I still drive past the Safeway on Bridgeport Way every week, and every time I do, I look at the parking lot and imagine my sister walking out of those doors, disappearing into thin air. I think about the last text message she sent me, the smiley face emoji, the plans we made for dinner that Thursday. I think about how ordinary that day was, how unremarkable, how it should have been just another Tuesday in March. But it was not. It was the day my sister vanished, and nothing has been the same since. If you are reading this, if you know anything about what happened to Jennifer Martinez, please come forward. Please help me find her. She has a family who loves her, a sister who has not stopped searching, who will never stop searching. She deserves to come home. And I deserve to know what happened to her on that Tuesday evening in March when she walked out of a grocery store and disappeared from the world. 5 years have passed, but I am still here. I am still waiting. I am still calling her name into the trees, into the wind, into the silence, hoping that someday, somehow, she will hear me and come home. I inherited my grandmother's house in Spokane, Washington when I was 34 years old. She had passed away in the spring after a long battle with dementia, and in her will she left the property to me. I was her only grandchild, and we had always been close when I was younger before the disease took her mind and left her a stranger in her own skin. The house was located in the Hilliard neighborhood, a quiet area north of downtown, filled with older homes built in the early 1900s. My grandmother's house had been constructed in 1910, a two-story craftsman with weathered siding, a sagging front porch, and windows that rattled in their frames whenever the wind blew. I had visited that house many times as a child, spending weekends there while my parents worked, and I had always felt uncomfortable inside it. There was something about the way the floorboards creaked when no one was walking on them, the way shadows seemed to gather in the corners of rooms even in the middle of the day, the way the air always felt heavier than it should. My grandmother never seemed bothered by it. She lived there for 43 years, raised my father in that house, and never once mentioned anything unusual. But I remembered feeling watched as a child, feeling like something was waiting just out of sight, something that did not want me there. When I inherited the house, I was living in Seattle, working a job I hated, renting an overpriced apartment I could barely afford. The idea of owning property, even property that needed work, was appealing. I told myself I would fix the house up, sell it, and use the money to start over somewhere else. So I quit my job, packed my belongings into a moving truck, and drove to Spokane. The house was exactly as I remembered it. Old, creaky, filled with the smell of dust and time. My grandmother's furniture was still there, her photographs still hanging on the walls, her dishes still stacked in the kitchen cabinets. It felt like walking into a museum of her life, frozen in place, waiting for her to return. I spent the first few days cleaning, sorting through her belongings, deciding what to keep and what to donate. It was emotional work, exhausting work, and I fell asleep each night in my grandmother's old bedroom, too tired to dream. It was on the fourth day that I noticed the door. I had been exploring the house, taking measurements, making notes about repairs that needed to be done. The basement door was located in the hallway between the kitchen and the living room. A heavy wooden door painted white, with a tarnished brass doorknob. I had walked past it dozens of times over the years, but I had never actually opened it. As a child, I had been told the basement was off limits, that it was dangerous, that the stairs were unstable and I might fall. I had accepted that explanation without question. But now, as an adult standing in front of that door, I noticed something strange. The door was not just closed, it was locked, not with one lock, but with three. A deadbolt near the top, a standard knob lock in the middle, and a heavy-duty sliding bolt near the bottom. All three locks were engaged, and all three were on the outside of the door, securing it from the hallway side. That struck me as odd. Why would someone lock a basement door from the outside? What was down there that needed to be kept in? I searched the house for keys and found them in a drawer in my grandmother's bedroom, tucked inside an old jewelry box. 3 keys on a ring, labeled in her shaky handwriting with a single word: basement. I took the keys and returned to the door, my curiosity overcoming my unease. I unlocked the deadbolt first, then the knob lock, then slid the bolt free. The door opened with a groan, revealing a steep wooden staircase descending into darkness. The smell that rose up from below was overpowering. Mildew, rot, something else I could not identify. I found a light switch on the wall and flipped it. A single bare bulb at the bottom of the stairs flickered to life, casting weak yellow light into the space below. I descended the stairs carefully, gripping the railing, feeling the wood bows slightly under my weight. The basement was unfinished, with exposed beams, concrete floors, and stone foundation walls. It was cluttered with old furniture, boxes of papers, rusted tools, and other debris. But what caught my attention immediately were the walls. They were covered in symbols. Strange, intricate symbols drawn in what looked like black paint or charcoal, covering every inch of the stone. Circles, triangles, lines intersecting in patterns I did not recognize. I walked closer, running my fingers over the markings, trying to make sense of them. They were not random. They were deliberate, carefully drawn, purposeful. I pulled out my phone and took photographs of the symbols, then turned my attention to the rest of the basement. In one corner, I found stacks of old newspapers, yellowed and brittle with age. I picked up the top paper and read the date, August 1967. The headline read, "3 found dead in Hilliard home, suspect still at large." I scanned the article quickly, my hands shaking. It described a brutal triple homicide that had occurred in a house on East Euclid Avenue, just a few blocks from where I was standing. 3 victims, a woman, her teenage daughter, and her young son. All had been stabbed to death in their beds. The primary suspect was a man named Thomas Hardwick, described as the woman's brother, age 31, who had been living in the home at the time of the murders. Hardwick had disappeared immediately after the killings, and police had launched a massive manhunt. The article included a grainy black and white photograph of him, a gaunt man with hollow eyes and a vacant expression. I set the newspaper down and continued searching the basement. Behind the old furnace, I found a small crawl space partially hidden by a sheet of plywood leaning against the wall. I pulled the plywood aside and shined my phone's flashlight into the space. What I saw made my stomach turn. There were lengths of rotted rope, stained dark with something I did not want to identify. There were children's toys, a doll with a cracked porcelain face, a wooden train missing its wheels, a stuffed bear with its stuffing spilling out, and there was blood. Old dried blood staining the concrete floor in a pattern that suggested it had pooled there for a long time before drying. I backed away from the crawl space, my heart pounding, my mind racing. I pulled out my phone and searched for more information about Thomas Hardwick. I found articles, police records, missing person reports. Thomas Hardwick had never been caught. He had vanished after the murders in 1967 and was never seen again. The case had gone cold. The house where the murders occurred had been torn down in the 1970s. But there was something else I found in my search. Thomas Hardwick's sister, the woman he had murdered, was named Margaret Hardwick, and Margaret Hardwick was my grandmother's maiden name. I felt my blood go cold. I searched for more details, piecing together the family tree. Thomas Hardwick was my grandmother's brother. My great-uncle, the man who had murdered his own sister and her children, was related to me by blood. And I was standing in the basement of the house where he had likely hidden after the murders. I climbed the stairs as quickly as I could, my legs shaking, my breath coming in short gasps. I locked the basement door behind me, engaging all 3 locks, my hands trembling. I searched my grandmother's belongings for anything that might explain what I had found. In a box in the attic, I discovered a journal written in my grandmother's handwriting. The entries were sporadic, spanning several decades, but one entry stood out. It was dated September 1967, just a month after the murders. It read, "Thomas came to the house last night. He was covered in blood, wild-eyed, speaking nonsense about voices and darkness. I told him to leave, but he refused. He went into the basement and would not come out. I called the police, but by the time they arrived, he was gone. I do not know where he went. I do not know if he will come back. I sealed the basement. I will never open it again. Never let Thomas come back." I sat on the floor of the attic, reading that entry over and over, trying to process what it meant. My grandmother had harbored her brother, even briefly, after he committed murder. She had known he was in her basement. She had locked the door to keep him out, or perhaps to keep something in. I did not sleep that night. I sat in the living room with every light in the house turned on, listening to the sounds of the old house settling around me. And then, just after midnight, I heard it. Scratching. Faint at first, then louder. It was coming from the basement. I stood up, my heart pounding, and walked slowly toward the hallway. The scratching continued, rhythmic and deliberate, like fingernails dragging across wood. I stood in front of the basement door, staring at the locks, all three still engaged. The scratching stopped. Then I heard footsteps, slow, heavy footsteps, ascending the stairs on the other side of the door. They climbed closer and closer until they stopped just on the other side of the door. I could hear breathing. Slow, ragged breathing, like someone struggling to draw air into damaged lungs. I did not move. I did not speak. I stood there, frozen, staring at the door, waiting for something to happen. Then the doorknob began to turn. Slowly, deliberately twisting back and forth, testing the lock. The deadbolt held. The knob lock held. The sliding bolt held. The doorknob stopped moving. The breathing stopped. The silence was deafening. I called the police. I told them I thought someone was in my basement, that I had heard noises, that I was scared. They arrived 20 minutes later, 2 officers with flashlights and skeptical expressions. I unlocked the door and let them descend into the basement. They searched every corner, every crawl space, every shadow. They found nothing. No intruder, no footprints, no signs of entry. But they did find the symbols on the walls, the newspapers, the crawl space with the rope and blood. They took photographs, filed a report, and told me to call if I heard anything else. After they left, I stood in front of the basement door again, staring at the locks. And that is when I noticed the footprints, muddy footprints leading from the basement door to the hallway, to the living room, to the stairs leading to the second floor. They stopped at the door to my bedroom. I followed them with my eyes, my breath catching in my throat. The footprints were not fresh. The mud was dried, cracked, the kind of mud that had been there for a long time. And the pattern of the footprints matched boots from another era, heavy work boots, the kind men wore in the 1960s. I left that night. I packed a bag, got in my car, and drove back to Seattle. I called a lawyer the next day and told them I wanted to sell the house immediately, as is, no repairs, no questions. The lawyer advised against it, said I would lose money, but I did not care. I wanted nothing to do with that place. The house sold 3 months later to a developer who planned to tear it down and build condominiums. I never went back. I never spoke to anyone in Spokane about what I found in that basement, about the symbols, the newspapers, the crawl space, the footprints. I tried to forget, tried to move on, but the memories stayed with me. I still think about Thomas Hardwick, about what happened to him after he disappeared, about whether he ever came back to that house. I think about my grandmother living there for 43 years with that basement door locked, knowing what was down there, knowing what her brother had done. And I think about the footprints, the breathing, the doorknob turning. Sometimes late at night, when I am alone in my apartment, I hear scratching. Faint, rhythmic, deliberate. And I wonder if I brought something back with me from that house. Something that followed me. Something that will not let me forget. The house was demolished 6 months after I sold it. The lot is empty now, just bare ground waiting for construction to begin. But I know that some things cannot be erased by demolition, cannot be buried under new foundations. Some things remain waiting in the darkness, scratching at doors that should never be opened. I have worked as a park ranger in North Cascades National Park for 17 years. I have pulled lost hikers out of ravines, treated snake bites and broken ankles on remote trails, helped search for missing children who wandered away from their campsites, and spent countless nights alone in the wilderness with nothing but a tent and a radio. I have seen black bears, mountain lions, and more rattlesnakes than I care to count. I have watched storms roll across the mountains with a fury that makes you understand how small and fragile you are in the face of nature. But in all my years working in these mountains, nothing has disturbed me more than the pattern of disappearances along the Cascade Pass Trail. It is a pattern that no one wants to acknowledge, a pattern that has no explanation, a pattern that keeps me awake at night even now. The Cascade Pass Trail is one of the most popular hiking routes in the park. It is a 7.4-mile round trip that climbs through old-growth forest, across alpine meadows, and up to a stunning mountain pass with views of glaciers and jagged peaks. Thousands of people hike it every year. It is rated as moderate difficulty, well-maintained, clearly marked, and generally considered safe. Families with children hike it, elderly couples hike it. Experienced hikers and complete beginners alike tackle it without incident. But over the past 12 years, 4 young men have disappeared on that trail without a trace. 4 young men who went out for a simple day hike and never came back. 4 young men whose families still have no answers, no closure, no bodies to bury. And I am the one who has been involved in every single search operation. The first disappearance occurred in September of 2007. A 21-year-old college student named Brian Foster went hiking alone on the Cascade Pass Trail. He told his roommate he would be back by dinner. He was an experienced hiker, in good physical condition, carrying a backpack with water, snacks, a map, and a fully charged cell phone. He was wearing bright red hiking gear, easy to spot from a distance. He checked in at the trailhead register at 9 in the morning, writing his name, the date, and his expected return time. He never came back. His roommate reported him missing at 10 that night. We launched a search operation at first light the next morning. We found his backpack 2.3 miles up the trail, right in the middle of the path, sitting upright as though it had been carefully placed there. The contents were scattered around it: his water bottle, a half-eaten granola bar, his map folded neatly, his phone with 43% battery remaining. But Brian Foster was nowhere to be found. We searched for 6 days. We brought in search dogs, helicopters, thermal imaging equipment, and dozens of volunteers. We combed every inch of the trail, every side path, every ravine, every drainage. We searched the surrounding forest, the river valleys, below, the ridges above. We found nothing. No clothing, no footprints leading off the trail, no signs of an animal attack, no evidence of a fall or injury. It was as though Brian Foster had simply stepped out of existence the moment he set his backpack down. The official conclusion was that he had likely wandered off the trail, become disoriented, and succumbed to the elements in a location we had not yet searched. But I walked that trail myself dozens of times during those 6 days, and I could not understand how someone could vanish so completely in such a well-traveled area. The case eventually went cold. Brian Foster was declared legally dead 7 years later. The second disappearance happened in July of 2010. A 19-year-old named Malik Robinson went hiking with friends on the Cascade Pass Trail. They were celebrating his high school graduation, spending a long weekend camping in the park. Malik and his friends started up the trail together around noon, joking and taking photographs. About halfway up, Malik told his friends he needed to use the restroom and asked them to keep going while he stepped off the trail briefly. They agreed, walking ahead while Malik disappeared into the trees. They expected him to catch up within a few minutes. He never did. After 10 minutes, they turned back to look for him. They called his name, searched the area where he had gone off trail, and began to panic when they could not find him. They called park rangers and we responded immediately. I was one of the first on scene. The search for Malik Robinson was extensive. We had a specific location where he had last been seen, and we concentrated our efforts there. We found signs that someone had been in the trees, a few broken branches, disturbed undergrowth. But no clear trail, no footprints, no indication of which direction he had gone. We expanded the search radius, brought in the same resources we had used for Brian Foster, and spent 8 days combing the area. We found nothing. No trace of Malik Robinson, no clothing, no belongings, nothing. His friends were devastated, his family was inconsolable, and I was baffled. How does a 19-year-old man step into the trees to relieve himself and disappear completely? The official conclusion was the same as before. Disorientation, exposure, location unknown. The case went cold. The third disappearance occurred in August of 2013. A 23-year-old named David Nguyen went hiking alone on the Cascade Pass Trail. He was an avid outdoorsman, experienced with backcountry navigation, and had hiked the trail multiple times before. He checked in at the trailhead register at 8 in the morning and was expected to return by early afternoon. When he did not return by evening, his girlfriend reported him missing. We launched a search operation the next morning. This time, we found his hiking boots. They were sitting on a flat rock 2 miles off the main trail in an area that required a steep, difficult scramble to reach. The boots were placed neatly side by side, laces tied together in a bow, as though someone had taken them off, tied them, and set them down carefully. There were no footprints around the boots, no signs of David Nguyen, no other belongings. Just the boots, sitting on a rock in the middle of nowhere. The discovery of the boots was disturbing in a way I cannot fully articulate. It made no sense. Why would someone hike 2 miles off trail, climb over difficult terrain, remove their boots, tie the laces together, and then continue on in bare feet or socks? And if David Nguyen had done that, where did he go afterward? We searched the area around the boots extensively. We searched the valleys below, the ridges above, the forest in every direction. We used dogs, helicopters, thermal imaging. We found nothing. No clothing, no body, no explanation. David Nguyen had vanished, leaving behind only his boots on a rock. The official conclusion: unknown circumstances, presumed dead. The case went cold. It was after the third disappearance that I began to notice the pattern. 3 young men, all between the ages of 19 and 23. All hiking alone or briefly separated from their group. All on the same trail. All vanished without explanation. I brought my concerns to my supervisors, suggesting that there might be a connection, that there might be something unusual happening on that trail. They dismissed my concerns. They pointed out that thousands of people hike the Cascade Pass Trail every year without incident, that disappearances in national parks are unfortunately common, that there was no evidence of foul play. They told me I was seeing patterns where none existed, that I was letting the stress of the job affect my judgment. I wanted to believe them. I wanted to believe that these were just tragic coincidences, isolated incidents with rational explanations. But I could not shake the feeling that something was wrong. The fourth disappearance occurred in September of 2019. A 20-year-old named Ethan Morris went hiking on the Cascade Pass Trail with his family. They were visiting from California, spending a week exploring the national parks of the Pacific Northwest. Ethan was walking ahead of his parents and younger sister, moving faster because he was in better shape. His parents lost sight of him around a bend in the trail. When they rounded the bend themselves a few minutes later, Ethan was gone. They called his name, searched the immediate area, and then ran back to the trailhead to report him missing. I led the search operation. We found his jacket hanging from a tree branch about half a mile up the trail from where his parents had last seen him. The jacket was turned inside out as though someone had removed it in a hurry and tossed it aside. But there was no sign of Ethan Morris. We searched for 10 days. We found nothing. 4 disappearances, 4 young men, 4 sets of belongings left behind in strange locations, 4 families destroyed by grief and unanswered questions, 4 cases that went cold. I have read every report, reviewed every piece of evidence, walked that trail more times than I can count. I have tried to find a rational explanation, something that ties these cases together, something that makes sense. But there is nothing. No common cause, no clear connection, no evidence of foul play, no evidence of natural causes. Just 4 young men who walked into the wilderness and never came back. I no longer patrol the Cascade Pass trail alone. I avoid it when I can, assigning it to other rangers or finding reasons to work in different areas of the park. When I do have to go there, I feel a weight in my chest, a sense of unease that I cannot shake. The trail looks the same as it always has. Beautiful, peaceful, lined with wildflowers in the summer and dusted with snow in the fall. But I know what has happened there. I know about the 4 young men who vanished, and I know that no one has an explanation. There is something else I have not mentioned, something I have told only a few people, something that makes me question my own sanity. On 3 separate occasions over the past 12 years, hikers have reported seeing a figure on the Cascade Pass trail. They describe it as a tall, thin man dressed in dark clothing, standing motionless off the side of the trail, watching them as they pass. The figure does not move, does not speak, does not respond to greetings or questions. It just stands there watching. And then when the hikers look back, the figure is gone. The reports are consistent enough that they cannot be dismissed entirely, but inconsistent enough that they have never been taken seriously by park officials. I have never seen the figure myself, but I wonder if Brian Foster saw it, if Malik Robinson saw it, if David Nguyen and Ethan Morris saw it. I wonder if that figure is the last thing they saw before they disappeared. I still work in North Cascades National Park. I still love these mountains, still believe in the importance of preserving wild places, still find meaning in helping people experience the beauty of the wilderness. But I am haunted by the Cascade Pass trail. I am haunted by the 4 young men who vanished. I am haunted by the questions that have no answers. And I am haunted by the silence. The silence of the forest where they disappeared. The silence of the official reports that offer no explanations. The silence of a truth that no one wants to confront. Malik Robinson is still listed as missing. His family still holds vigils on his birthday, still posts updates on social media, still hopes that someday he will be found. But I know the truth. Whatever happened to Malik Robinson, whatever happened to Brian Foster and David Nguyen and Ethan Morris, they are not coming back. They are gone, taken by something that leaves no trace, no evidence, no explanation. And the Cascade Pass trail remains open, welcoming thousands of hikers every year, beautiful and serene and hiding a secret that I cannot name. The summer of 1998 was supposed to be a fresh start for me. I was 25 years old, recently divorced, broke, and looking for a way to rebuild my life. I had heard about seasonal work in the apple orchards of Wenatchee Valley, Washington, where they hired hundreds of workers every summer to pick fruit. The pay was not great, but it came with housing, meals, and the promise of long hours that would keep me busy and help me save money. I packed everything I owned into my beat-up Toyota and drove east from Seattle, crossing the Cascade Mountains into the dry, hot landscape of central Washington. The orchards stretched for miles in every direction, endless rows of apple trees heavy with fruit, the air thick with the smell of earth and ripening apples. It was beautiful in a way I had not expected, and for the first time in months I felt a small flicker of hope. The housing provided for seasonal workers was basic but functional. Several trailers arranged in a loose circle surrounded by dirt and gravel, with a communal bathroom and a small office where the foreman distributed assignments each morning. Most of the workers were transient, moving from harvest to harvest across the country following the seasons. They were a diverse group. College students earning tuition money, older folks supplementing Social Security checks, people like me who were running from something and needed a place to land. I shared a trailer with another woman named Diana Kowalski. She was from Montana, 32 years old with sun-bleached hair and a quick laugh. We became friends almost immediately, bonding over our shared circumstances and the exhausting work of picking apples from dawn until dusk. The work was brutal. We started at 6 in the morning, climbing ladders and filling canvas bags with apples, then dumping the bags into large wooden bins that were hauled away by trucks. The sun beat down on us relentlessly, and by midday the heat was unbearable. My hands blistered, my back ached, and I fell asleep each night too tired to dream. But there was a rhythm to it, a simplicity that I found comforting. I was not thinking about my failed marriage or my uncertain future. I was just picking apples one after another, filling bags, climbing ladders, existing in the moment. Diana and I would sit outside our trailer in the evenings, drinking cheap beer and talking about where we would go next, what jobs we would find, what lives we would build. She wanted to save enough money to buy a small piece of land in Montana and start a farm. I wanted to go back to school, maybe study nursing. We made plans the way people do when they are trying to convince themselves that the future will be better than the past. It was about 6 weeks into the season when the first woman disappeared. Her name was Lucy Hernandez, a 19-year-old from California. She had been working in the orchards for 3 weeks, living in one of the trailers on the other side of the camp. One morning, she did not show up for work. The foreman knocked on her trailer door, got no answer, and assumed she had quit and moved on. It happened sometimes. People left without notice, deciding the work was too hard or finding better opportunities elsewhere. But a week later, when Lucy still had not collected her final paycheck or retrieved her belongings from the trailer, people started to worry. The police were called, but they did not seem particularly concerned. Lucy was an adult, free to come and go as she pleased. There was no evidence of foul play. Her belongings were still in the trailer, but her purse and wallet were gone. The assumption was that she had left voluntarily and the case was not pursued aggressively. 2 weeks after Lucy disappeared, another woman vanished. Her name was Maria Santos, 23 years old, from Texas. She had been working in the orchards for a month and was well liked by everyone. She was last seen walking to the communal bathroom after her shift around 8 in the evening. She never returned to her trailer. Her roommate reported her missing immediately, and this time the police took it more seriously. They interviewed everyone in the camp, searched the surrounding orchards and fields, and reviewed the limited security footage from the foreman's office. They found nothing. Maria Santos had simply disappeared. The atmosphere in the camp changed after that. People were nervous, whispering theories, looking over their shoulders. Some workers left, deciding it was not worth the risk. Those of us who stayed tried to convince ourselves that it was a coincidence, that there was a rational explanation, that we were safe. Diana and I were careful. We stayed together as much as possible, never walking anywhere alone, locking our trailer door at night. But I started noticing things. A white pickup truck that drove past the camp slowly almost every evening, never stopping, just cruising by at a crawl. I mentioned it to Diana and she said she had noticed it too. The driver was a man, middle-aged, bald, always alone. He never waved, never acknowledged us, just stared as he drove past. It gave me a sick feeling in my stomach, a feeling that I tried to ignore but could not shake. I told the foreman about the truck and he said he would keep an eye out, but nothing came of it. The truck kept appearing always in the evening, always driving slowly past the camp. 3 weeks after Maria Santos disappeared, Diana mentioned that a man had offered her a ride into town. She said he seemed nice, friendly, that he had stopped his truck and asked if she needed anything. She described the truck as white, older model, with a dent in the front bumper. I felt my blood run cold. I told her not to accept rides from anyone, not to trust anyone, to stay close to me. She laughed it off, said I was being paranoid, but she agreed to be careful. The next day, Diana did not show up for work. I went to our trailer during my lunch break and found it empty. Her belongings were still there, but Diana was gone. I ran to the foreman's office, screaming that something had happened, that she was missing, that we needed to call the police immediately. The police arrived within an hour. They searched the camp, interviewed everyone, and launched a full investigation. I told them about the white truck, about the man who had offered Diana a ride, about the feeling I had that something was wrong. They took my statement seriously this time. They were finally paying attention. 3 nights later, I woke up at 2 a.m. to the sound of someone trying to pry open the window of my trailer. I had been sleeping lightly, every noise jolting me awake, my body on high alert. I heard the scraping sound of metal against the window frame, heard someone grunting with effort. I grabbed the knife I had been keeping under my pillow since Diana disappeared, a kitchen knife with a 6-inch blade, and I held it in my shaking hands. The window cracked open and I saw a dark shape climbing through. I did not think. I lunged forward and stabbed the shape in the shoulder with all the strength I had. The man screamed a horrible guttural sound and fell backward out of the window. I heard him hit the ground, heard him running, heard the sound of a truck engine starting in the distance. I turned on the lights, locked the window, and called the police. The police found a blood trail leading from my trailer to the edge of the camp where tire tracks in the dirt indicated someone had parked and then sped away. They followed the blood trail and found the white pickup truck abandoned half a mile down the road. The driver was gone, but inside the truck they found evidence that made my stomach turn. Rope, duct tape, a tarp, plastic sheeting. And in the glove compartment they found Polaroid photographs. Photographs of Lucy Hernandez, Maria Santos, and Diana Kowalski bound and gagged, terror in their eyes. They also found Diana's necklace, a silver cross she wore every day, sitting on the passenger seat. The police collected blood samples from the truck, from my knife, from the trail outside my trailer. They ran the DNA through their databases, hoping for a match. There was none. The man who had tried to break into my trailer, the man who had abducted 3 women, was not in the system. He had no criminal record, no fingerprints on file, no identity they could trace. The search for the suspect intensified. Police canvassed the area, interviewed residents, reviewed security footage from nearby businesses. They found witnesses who had seen a white pickup truck in the area around the times of the disappearances, but no one could provide a clear description of the driver or a license plate number. The truck had been stolen from a farm 20 miles away weeks before the first disappearance, making it even harder to trace. The case went cold. 2 years later, the remains of Lucy Hernandez, Maria Santos, and Diana Kowalski were discovered in an abandoned irrigation well 15 miles from the orchards. They had all been murdered, their bodies dumped and left to decompose in the darkness. The discovery brought some closure to their families, but it did not bring justice. The killer was never identified, never caught, never brought to trial. I left Wenatchee Valley the day after I stabbed the man in my trailer. I could not stay there, could not sleep in that place, could not walk past the spot where Diana and I used to sit and talk about our futures. I drove back to Seattle, found a new job, started therapy, tried to rebuild my life for the second time. But I have never been the same. I carry a knife everywhere I go. I check the locks on my doors and windows twice every night. I cannot sleep without a light on. I wake up at the slightest sound, my heart racing, my body preparing to fight. I have survivor's guilt that weighs on me like a physical burden. I survived because I was paranoid, because I was afraid, because I had a knife under my pillow. Diana did not survive because she trusted someone, because she accepted a ride, because she believed that people were fundamentally good. I think about her every day. I think about the moment I stabbed that man, the moment I fought back, the moment I saved my own life. And I think about the fact that he is still out there somewhere, living his life, unpunished, unidentified, free. The case remains unsolved, the killer remains unknown. And I remain haunted by the summer of 1998, when I learned that monsters are real, and sometimes they drive white pickup trucks through apple orchards at dusk. I joined the Ascended Path in the spring of 2007 when I was 31 years old and my life had fallen apart. My wife had left me after 8 years of marriage, taking our daughter with her. I had lost my job as a software engineer during a round of layoffs. I was drinking too much, sleeping too little, and spending most of my days alone in an apartment that felt like a tomb. A friend from college suggested I try meditation, said it had helped him through a rough patch. I was desperate enough to try anything, so I searched online for meditation groups in Bellingham, Washington, where I had moved to escape the memories of my old life in Seattle. That is how I found the Ascended Path. The website described it as a spiritual community focused on mindfulness, personal growth, and connection to higher consciousness. It looked harmless, even welcoming. There were photographs of people sitting in circles, smiling, holding hands. The testimonials spoke of healing, transformation, and purpose. I signed up for an introductory session. The first meeting was held in a small rented space above a yoga studio in downtown Bellingham. About 15 people were there, sitting on cushions arranged in a circle. The leader of the group was a woman named Elaine Frost. She was in her mid-40s, tall and graceful, with long gray hair and piercing blue eyes. She spoke softly but with absolute confidence, describing the Ascended Path as a journey toward enlightenment, a way to transcend the suffering of ordinary existence and connect with ancient wisdom. She led us through a guided meditation, her voice soothing and hypnotic. By the end of the session, I felt calmer than I had in months. I signed up for another session immediately. Over the next few weeks, I attended meetings twice a week. Elaine spoke about energy, vibration, and the illusion of separation. She said that most people were sleepwalking through life, disconnected from their true selves, enslaved by materialism and fear. The Ascended Path offered a way out, a way to awaken. Her teachings resonated with me. I was tired of feeling lost, tired of the emptiness that had consumed me since my divorce. I wanted to believe that there was something more, something beyond the mundane suffering of my existence. After a month, Elaine approached me privately and said she sensed great potential in me, that I was ready for deeper work. She invited me to join the Inner Circle, a smaller group of dedicated members who met more frequently and engaged in more intensive practices. I agreed, flattered by her attention. The Inner Circle consisted of about 10 people, and we began meeting 4 times a week at a large house on the outskirts of Bellingham that Elaine owned. The house was old, surrounded by dense forest, isolated from neighbors. It felt like a sanctuary. Elaine encouraged us to spend more time there, to distance ourselves from the distractions and negativity of the outside world. She said our families and friends did not understand what we were doing, that they would try to pull us back into their limited perspectives. She suggested that we minimize contact with them, at least temporarily, while we focused on our spiritual development. It seemed reasonable at the time. My ex-wife was not speaking to me anyway, and I had few friends left. The members of the Ascended Path became my new family. Gradually, Elaine began asking for financial contributions. She said that maintaining the house and supporting the community required resources, and that those who were truly committed should share the burden. I started donating money from my dwindling savings. Others did the same. Some members sold their possessions, quit their jobs, and moved into the house permanently. Elaine said this was a sign of their dedication, their willingness to fully embrace the path. I was not ready to move in, but I felt guilty for holding back, for clinging to my apartment and the remnants of my old life. Elaine began to speak more frequently about channeling. She claimed that she was in contact with ancient beings from higher dimensions, entities who communicated through her and offered guidance to those who were ready to listen. During our meetings, she would enter a trance-like state, her voice changing, becoming deeper and more commanding. She delivered messages from these beings, prophecies about the future, instructions about how we should live. She said that a great cleansing was coming, that the world as we knew it would collapse, and that only those who had ascended would survive. We needed to prepare, she said. We needed to purify ourselves, to shed the last remnants of our old identities. It was around this time that a new member joined the group. His name was Kevin Hartwell, a 35-year-old former teacher from Oregon. Kevin was skeptical from the beginning. He asked questions, challenged Elaine's teachings, pointed out inconsistencies in her channeling sessions. Elaine tolerated his questions at first, but I could see the irritation in her eyes. After a few weeks, Kevin announced that he was leaving the group. He said he did not believe Elaine was channeling anything, that she was manipulating vulnerable people, that the whole thing was a scam. Elaine smiled calmly and said that Kevin was not ready for the path, that his ego was too strong, that he was choosing fear over enlightenment. She wished him well and told him he was free to leave whenever he wanted. Kevin packed his things and said goodbye to a few of us, but he never left. Or rather, he never left the property. Elaine told us the next day that Kevin had changed his mind, that he had decided to stay and work through his resistance. But I never saw Kevin again. When I asked about him, Elaine said he was in seclusion undergoing intensive purification work and that he did not want to be disturbed. In late 2008, Elaine announced that it was time for a special ritual, a ceremony that would elevate the inner circle to a new level of consciousness. She said the ritual would take place in the forest behind the house, under the full moon. We were instructed to fast for 3 days beforehand, to cleanse our bodies and minds. On the night of the ritual, we gathered in a clearing deep in the woods. Elaine had prepared a fire and set up an altar with candles, crystals, and strange symbols drawn on the ground. She gave us each a cup of tea, which she said contained sacred herbs that would help us open our minds to the higher dimensions. I drank the tea without question. Within minutes, I felt disoriented, my vision blurring, my body heavy. The others looked the same, swaying on their feet, their eyes unfocused. Elaine began chanting in a language I did not recognize, her voice echoing through the trees. And then I saw Kevin. He was lying on the ground near the altar, bound with ropes, barely conscious. His face was gaunt, his clothes filthy, his body emaciated. He looked like he had not eaten in weeks. Elaine stood over him, holding a knife, her face illuminated by the firelight. She said that Kevin's darkness needed to be expelled, that his resistance to the path had created a poison within him that threatened the entire community. She said the ritual would cleanse him, would force the darkness out, would save him. The others in the circle were nodding, swaying, murmuring in agreement. I tried to speak, tried to move, but my body would not respond. I felt like I was watching from outside myself, detached and powerless. Elaine raised the knife and I realized with horror what was about to happen. I forced myself to move, to break through the fog in my mind. I stumbled backward, away from the circle, and then I turned and ran. I do not remember much about the run through the forest. I was barefoot, crashing through underbrush, tripping over roots, my lungs burning. I could hear voices behind me shouting, but I did not look back. I ran until I reached a road and I flagged down a truck driver who was passing by. I begged him to call the police, told him there was someone in danger, that he needed to help. The driver must have seen the terror in my eyes because he pulled over immediately and called 911. The police arrived within 20 minutes and I led them back to the property. They found Kevin still alive, barely, tied to a post in the clearing. Elaine and the others were gone, scattered into the woods. Kevin was hospitalized, treated for severe malnutrition, dehydration, and signs of prolonged physical abuse. The police searched the property and found evidence of other rituals, other victims. In the basement of the house, they discovered dozens of cassette tapes, recordings of previous ceremonies. The tapes contained hours of chanting, screaming, and Elaine's voice describing the purification process. Some of the tapes referenced names of former members who had supposedly left the group voluntarily. 2 of those people were never found. Elaine Frost was arrested along with 4 members of her inner circle. They were charged with kidnapping, assault, conspiracy, and attempted murder. During the trial, Elaine showed no remorse. She testified that she was doing divine work, that Kevin and the others needed to be purified, that she was saving them from their own darkness. The jury convicted her on all counts and she was sentenced to 30 years in prison. The other members received lesser sentences. Kevin Hartwell survived, physically at least. I do not know how he is doing now. I have never tried to contact him. I do not think I could face him knowing that I was part of the group that did that to him, knowing that I stood in that circle and watched while Elaine prepared to hurt him. I left Washington after the trial. I moved to Arizona, started over again. I have been in therapy for years trying to process what happened, trying to understand how I allowed myself to be manipulated, how I ignored the warning signs, how I put my need for belonging above my own moral compass. I still receive letters occasionally, forwarded from my old address. They are from people who still believe in Elaine, who think I betrayed the path, who call me a coward and a traitor. The letters are disturbing, filled with threats and accusations, but I saved them. They remind me of what I escaped, of how close I came to losing myself completely in the darkness of the ascended path. I moved to Seattle in the fall of 2021 for a job in the tech industry. I was 27 years old, fresh out of graduate school, excited about starting my career and finally living on my own after years of sharing apartments with roommates. The job paid well, but Seattle rent was notoriously expensive, and finding an affordable 1-bedroom apartment in a decent neighborhood felt impossible. I spent weeks searching online, viewing overpriced studios and cramped basement units, growing increasingly discouraged. Then I found the listing for an apartment on Pine Street in Capitol Hill. 1 bedroom, hardwood floors, updated kitchen, walking distance to restaurants and shops. The rent was surprisingly affordable, almost too good to be true. I scheduled a viewing immediately. The building was a classic 1920s brick structure, 4 stories tall, with ornate detailing around the windows and a small courtyard entrance. The landlord, a middle-aged man named Raymond Voss, met me in the lobby and led me up to the 3rd floor. The apartment was exactly as described in the listing. High ceilings, large windows, original hardwood floors that creaked pleasantly underfoot. The kitchen had been recently renovated and the bathroom was clean and functional. It felt perfect. I asked Raymond why the rent was so reasonable compared to other units in the neighborhood. He said the previous tenant had left suddenly and he needed to fill the vacancy quickly. He did not elaborate and I did not press for details. I signed the lease that afternoon and moved in 2 weeks later. The first few weeks were blissful. I loved the neighborhood, the coffee shops on every corner, the bookstores and vintage clothing boutiques, the sense of community. I worked from home 3 days a week, which gave me time to explore and settle in. The apartment felt like my own little sanctuary after years of sharing space with other people. But after about a month, I started noticing small things that seemed off. I would come home from the office and find items moved from where I had left them. A coffee mug on the kitchen counter instead of in the cabinet where I had placed it. Books on my shelf rearranged in a different order. The bathroom door closed when I distinctly remembered leaving it open. At first, I dismissed these occurrences as mistakes on my part, my memory playing tricks on me. I was busy with work, stressed about adjusting to a new city and a demanding job. It seemed reasonable that I might be forgetting small details, but the occurrences continued. One evening, I returned home to find all the cabinet doors in the kitchen standing open. I stood in the doorway, staring at them, my heart pounding. I had not left them that way. I was certain of that. I checked the locks on my door and windows. Everything was secure. There was no sign of forced entry, no indication that anyone had been inside. I called the building manager and asked if maintenance had entered my apartment for any reason. He said no, that they always provided 24 hours notice before entering a unit and no work had been scheduled. I changed the locks anyway, paying for it out of my own pocket. The building manager seemed annoyed but did not object. For a few days, nothing unusual happened, and I convinced myself that I had been overreacting. Then I met Mrs. Patterson. She was an elderly woman who lived in the apartment next to mine, probably in her 80s with white hair and kind eyes. We ran into each other in the hallway one afternoon and she struck up a conversation. She asked how I was settling in, said she was glad to have a new neighbor. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. She said she hoped I would stay longer than the last tenant. I asked her what she meant. She explained that the previous tenant, a young woman named Ashley Brennan, had lived in my apartment for only 2 months before disappearing. Mrs. Patterson said Ashley had seemed nervous in the weeks before she vanished, that she had mentioned hearing noises at night and feeling like someone was watching her. When I pressed for more details, Mrs. Patterson said Ashley had called the police twice about someone entering her apartment, but the police found no evidence of a break-in and suggested she might be imagining things. Then one day in late 2019, Ashley simply did not come home from work. She was reported missing by her family. The case was never solved. I went home and immediately searched online for information about Ashley Brennan. I found a missing person report, news articles, a Facebook page created by her family asking for any information about her whereabouts. She was 24 years old when she disappeared, worked as a graphic designer, had no history of mental illness or substance abuse. She was described as responsible, reliable, not the type of person to vanish without explanation. The last confirmed sighting of her was leaving her office downtown at 5 in the evening. She never made it home. The case went cold after a few months. Reading about Ashley terrified me, but I tried to rationalize it. People go missing in cities all the time. It did not mean her disappearance was connected to the apartment. I told myself I was being paranoid, but I could not shake the fear. I installed a security camera inside my apartment, a small device that pointed at the front door and recorded continuously. I reviewed the footage every morning, checking to see if anyone had entered while I was asleep. For several days, the footage showed nothing unusual. Then one morning, I reviewed the footage from the previous night and saw something that made me physically ill. At 3:14 in the morning, my apartment door opened. The footage showed the door swinging inward slowly, but no one entered. The hallway outside was dark and empty. The door remained open for exactly 5 minutes, then swung closed and locked. I watched the footage 10 times, trying to find a rational explanation. There was none. Someone with a key had opened my door in the middle of the night while I was sleeping. I tore through the apartment, searching for anything that might explain what was happening. In the bedroom, I pulled everything out of the closet, looking for hidden cameras or microphones. I found nothing. Then I noticed something strange about the wall at the back of the closet. It sounded hollow when I knocked on it. I grabbed a screwdriver and pried away a section of the drywall. Behind it was a hidden compartment, roughly 2 feet wide and 3 feet tall. Inside the compartment, I found a collection of items that made my stomach turn. 3 driver's licenses belonging to different women, including one for Ashley Brennan. Jewelry, rings, necklaces, bracelets. A stack of Polaroid photographs showing the interior of my apartment from angles I recognized, but with different furniture and decorations. And newspaper clippings, yellowed with age, about missing women in Seattle dating back to 2015. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and called the police. I told them what I had found, gave them my address, and begged them to come quickly. Then I locked myself in the bathroom and waited. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears, could feel the panic rising in my chest. And then I heard it, the sound of a key turning in the front door lock. The door opened. I heard footsteps in the living room, slow and deliberate. I heard drawers being opened and closed, heard the sound of someone searching. I pressed my back against the bathroom door and dialed 911 again, whispering into the phone that someone was in my apartment, that I needed help immediately. The dispatcher told me to stay on the line, said officers were 3 minutes away. The footsteps moved closer to the bathroom. I heard a voice, low and muttering, saying, "Where is it? Where did she find it?" repeated over and over. It was Raymond Voss, my landlord. He was inside my apartment looking for the evidence I had discovered. The police arrived within minutes. I heard them enter, heard them shouting for Raymond to show his hands, heard the sounds of a struggle. Then an officer knocked on the bathroom door and told me it was safe to come out. Raymond Voss was handcuffed, sitting on my couch, his face blank and emotionless. The police searched the entire building and found more evidence. Hidden cameras installed in the ventilation ducts of my apartment and 2 other units. A master key that opened every door in the building. A crawl space beneath the building where they found personal belongings that matched those of 2 other missing women. And eventually they found Ashley Brennan. Her body was hidden in a sealed section of the building's basement behind a false wall. She had been dead for over 2 years. Raymond Voss was arrested and charged with murder, kidnapping, stalking, and numerous other crimes. During interrogation, he confessed to killing Ashley Brennan. He said she had discovered his cameras, that she was going to report him to the police, that he had to stop her. He denied involvement in the other disappearances, claimed he did not know how those women's belongings ended up in his building. But investigators found evidence linking him to at least 2 other murders. The trial lasted 3 months. I testified about what I had found, about the terror of knowing he had been watching me, entering my apartment while I slept, stalking me the same way he had stalked Ashley and the others. Raymond Voss was convicted on all counts and sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole. I moved out of the apartment immediately after Raymond's arrest. I could not stay in that building, could not sleep in that apartment knowing what had happened there, knowing that Ashley Brennan had died just floors below where I had been living. I left Seattle entirely, returned to my family in Olympia, took a remote position with my company so I could work from anywhere. I have been in therapy for 3 years now, working through the trauma of those months on Pine Street. I still have nightmares about the sound of footsteps in my apartment, about the moment I found Ashley's driver's license in that hidden compartment, about the realization that I had been sleeping in a place where women had been murdered. I cannot live alone anymore. I cannot sleep with the door closed. I check every closet, every crawl space, every hidden corner of any space I occupy. The knowledge that predators exist, that they can be landlords and neighbors and people you trust with your safety, has fundamentally changed how I move through the world. Ashley Brennan deserved better. She deserved to be believed when she reported someone entering her apartment. She deserved justice, and I carry the weight of her story with me every day. I grew up attending Evergreen Community Church in Tacoma, Washington. My parents were devout believers, and from the time I was old enough to walk, I was in church every Sunday morning, every Wednesday evening, and for every special event in between. It was not just a place of worship. It was our entire social life, our community, our family. I had friends at church, went to youth group activities, attended summer camps organized by the congregation. For 19 years, the church was the center of my world, and I never questioned it. I believed everything I was taught, trusted everyone who stood behind the pulpit, and accepted that the church was a safe place where people looked out for one another. That belief was shattered in the spring of 2020 when a new pastor arrived and everything changed. His name was Dale Simmons, and he came to Evergreen Community Church after our longtime pastor retired. Pastor Dale, as he insisted we call him, was different from the pastors I had grown up with. He was younger, maybe in his early 40s, with a polished appearance and a charismatic speaking style. He wore expensive suits, smiled constantly, and spoke with the kind of confidence that made you want to believe every word he said. Within weeks of his arrival, the church began to change. The sermons became more intense, focused on spiritual warfare, demons, and the battle between good and evil. Pastor Dale spoke about sin in graphic terms, describing the fires of hell in vivid detail, warning us that Satan was constantly trying to infiltrate our lives. Some of the older members of the congregation seemed uncomfortable with the shift in tone, but most people embraced it. They said Pastor Dale was bringing new energy to the church, that he was unafraid to speak the truth, that he was exactly what Evergreen needed. A few months after Pastor Dale arrived, he announced the formation of a special ministry for young adults called the Prayer Circle. He said it was designed for people between the ages of 18 and 25 who wanted to deepen their spiritual lives and develop a closer relationship with God. The meetings would be held twice a week in the church basement, separate from the regular services. My parents encouraged me to join, said it would be good for me to be part of a faith community with people my own age. I agreed, partly because I wanted to make them happy and partly because I was curious. The first prayer circle meeting was held on a Tuesday evening. About 15 of us showed up, sitting in folding chairs arranged in a circle in the dim basement. Pastor Dale led the meeting, beginning with a prayer and then guiding us through a Bible study focused on spiritual purity. The session lasted 2 hours and ended with an intense prayer time where Pastor Dale encouraged us to speak in tongues and claim spiritual gifts. Some people started speaking in languages I did not recognize, swaying and raising their hands. I felt uncomfortable but did not want to seem like I lacked faith, so I stayed quiet and observed. Over the next few weeks, the prayer circle meetings became more intense. Pastor Dale started focusing heavily on the concept of purity, particularly sexual purity. He would talk about how our bodies were temples, how we needed to guard ourselves against impure thoughts and desires, how even small sins could open the door for demonic influence. He began conducting individual counseling sessions, saying that one-on-one guidance was necessary for true spiritual growth. When my turn came for a counseling session, I met Pastor Dale in his office after a Wednesday evening service. The office was small, with a desk, 2 chairs, and a bookshelf lined with theological texts. Pastor Dale closed the door and told me to sit down. He began by asking me general questions about my faith, my prayer life, my relationship with my parents. Then the questions became more personal. He asked about my relationships with boys, whether I had ever been kissed, whether I had ever experienced sexual feelings. I felt my face flush with embarrassment. I told him I had dated someone briefly in high school, but that it had been innocent, nothing physical beyond holding hands. He nodded, wrote something in a notebook, and then asked me to describe my body. He said he needed to assess my purity, that understanding my physical self was part of understanding my spiritual state. I felt deeply uncomfortable but did not know how to respond. Pastor Dale was a man of God, a leader in the church, someone my parents trusted and respected. I assumed that this was part of the counseling process, that maybe I was just naive and did not understand how spiritual guidance worked. I gave vague answers describing myself in general terms, trying to move past the questions as quickly as possible. He asked me to stand up, said he needed to perform an anointing ritual to bless me and protect me from spiritual attacks. He took a small bottle of oil from his desk and poured some into his palm. Then he stepped close to me and placed his hands on my shoulders, praying aloud. His hands moved down my arms, then across my back, then lower, to places that made me freeze in panic. I stepped back abruptly, my heart pounding, and told him I needed to leave. He looked surprised, said I was misunderstanding the ritual, that physical touch was part of spiritual healing. I left his office without another word, my hands shaking, my mind racing. I did not tell anyone what had happened. I felt ashamed, confused, unsure if what I had experienced was actually wrong or if I was overreacting. I stopped attending the prayer circle meetings, making excuses to my parents about being busy with work. But a few weeks later, another girl from the youth group named Madison Torres approached me after a Sunday service. She pulled me aside, her eyes filled with tears, and asked if Pastor Dale had ever touched me inappropriately. I felt my stomach drop. I nodded, unable to speak. Madison started crying and told me that Pastor Dale had done the same thing to her during a counseling session. He had asked invasive questions about her body, performed the same anointing ritual, and touched her in ways that made her feel violated. He told her it was necessary for spiritual cleansing, that she needed to submit to his authority as a man of God, that resisting him was the same as resisting God. Madison said she had been too scared to tell anyone, worried that people would not believe her, worried that she would be blamed. We decided to report Pastor Dale together. We went to the church board, a group of 5 men who served as leadership and oversight for the congregation. We sat in a small conference room and described what had happened, our voices shaking, our hands clenched together for support. The men listened in silence, their faces unreadable. When we finished, one of the board members, an older man named Richard, spoke. He said that Pastor Dale was a good man, that he had done wonderful things for the church, that we must be misunderstanding his intentions. Another board member suggested that we were confusing spiritual guidance with something inappropriate, that perhaps our own impure thoughts were causing us to misinterpret innocent actions. They thanked us for coming forward, but said they did not believe Pastor Dale had done anything wrong. They advised us to pray about it, to ask God for clarity, and to stop spreading accusations that could damage the reputation of a godly man. Madison and I left that meeting devastated. My parents did not believe me when I told them what had happened. They said I was being influenced by the secular world, that I was trying to tear down a man who was doing God's work. They suggested I was jealous of the attention Pastor Dale gave to other members of the youth group, that I was acting out because I wanted to feel special. The betrayal of not being believed by my own parents was almost worse than what Pastor Dale had done. Madison and I decided to go to the police. We filed reports, gave statements, described in detail what Pastor Dale had done to us. The police took us seriously. They launched an investigation, interviewed other members of the prayer circle, and discovered a pattern. 5 other girls came forward, all with similar stories. Pastor Dale had been using his position of authority to prey on young women in the congregation, manipulating them with religious language, convincing them that his actions were part of spiritual practice. Pastor Dale was arrested and charged with multiple counts of sexual assault. During the investigation, police discovered that he had been forced to leave 2 previous churches under similar circumstances. The leadership at those churches had quietly asked him to resign rather than reporting him to authorities, allowing him to move on and continue abusing his power elsewhere. The board at Evergreen Community Church had known about Pastor Dale's history when they hired him. They had known he had been accused of inappropriate behavior at other churches. They hired him anyway, believing that he deserved a second chance, that the accusations had been exaggerated, that he was being persecuted for his bold preaching. Pastor Dale eventually pleaded guilty to avoid a trial. He was sentenced to 8 years in prison. The judge condemned him not only for his actions, but for using faith as a weapon, for exploiting the trust that young people placed in him as a spiritual leader. The aftermath was devastating. The church split almost immediately. Half of the congregation defended Pastor Dale, insisting that the accusations were lies, that he was being persecuted, that Madison and I were instruments of Satan trying to destroy a man of God. The other half was horrified, demanding that the board resign for hiring Pastor Dale despite his history and for dismissing our initial reports. My parents sided with those who defended Pastor Dale. They stopped speaking to me, told me I had brought shame on our family, said I was no longer welcome in their home. I moved in with Madison's family for a while, then found my own apartment and tried to rebuild my life. I stopped attending church entirely, unable to trust any religious institution after what had happened. Madison and I remained close, bonded by shared trauma, supporting each other through therapy and the long process of healing. It has been 5 years since Pastor Dale was convicted. I am 24 now, working as a teacher, living a life that is finally starting to feel stable. My parents still do not speak to me. They attend a different church now, one where Pastor Dale's supporters gathered after Evergreen Community Church dissolved. I have heard that they still believe he was innocent, that they pray for his release from prison. The knowledge that my own parents chose to believe a predator over their own daughter is a wound that has not healed. But I have learned that faith and truth are not the same thing, that institutions can be corrupt, that authority can be abused, and that speaking out against injustice is more important than maintaining false peace. Madison and I have both found ways to move forward, to reclaim our lives from the damage that was done. And we know that by speaking out, we prevented Pastor Dale from hurting anyone else. I have been a long-haul truck driver for 22 years. I have driven every major highway in the western United States, logged millions of miles, seen every kind of weather and road condition imaginable. I have spent countless nights alone on dark highways, the only sound the rumble of my engine and the occasional crackle of the CB radio. I have seen accidents, helped stranded motorists, pulled over to sleep in rest stops in the middle of nowhere. The road is my life, and I thought I had seen everything it could throw at me. But on a cold November night in 2015, I encountered something that changed the way I see the world and made me understand that evil can be hiding anywhere, even on the most familiar routes. I was driving a late-night run across Highway 20 through the North Cascades in Washington State. It was a route I had driven hundreds of times, a winding 2-lane road that cuts through mountains and dense forest, connecting the western and eastern parts of the state. It was 11 at night, and the highway was nearly deserted. The temperature had dropped below freezing, and patches of ice were forming on the road. I was hauling a load of electronics from Seattle to Spokane, running on schedule, listening to classic rock on the radio to keep myself alert. The highway was dark, illuminated only by my headlights and the occasional reflector post. I had not seen another vehicle in over an hour. Then I saw her, a young woman standing on the side of the highway, waving her arms frantically. She was illuminated briefly by my headlights as I approached. Blonde hair, early 20s, wearing a light jacket that was completely inadequate for the freezing temperature. She looked desperate, terrified. My first instinct was to keep driving. Company policy was clear. Do not pick up hitchhikers, do not stop for strangers, do not put yourself at risk. But I could not do it. I could not leave a young woman stranded on a freezing highway in the middle of nowhere. I pulled over, letting the truck idle, and rolled down my window. She ran to the passenger side and I unlocked the door. She climbed in, shivering violently, her lips pale, her hands shaking. She introduced herself as Caitlin Reed. She was 22 years old, from Burlington, Washington. Her teeth were chattering so hard she could barely speak. I turned the heat up as high as it would go, pulled a blanket from behind my seat, and wrapped it around her shoulders. I asked her what had happened, how she ended up stranded on Highway 20 in the middle of the night. She said her boyfriend had kicked her out of his car after a fight, that he had driven away and left her on the side of the road. It was a terrible thing to do, but not unheard of. I told her I would drive her to the nearest town, Marble Mount, which was about 30 miles ahead. She nodded, still shivering, pulling the blanket tighter around herself. As we drove, I kept glancing over at her. Something about her story did not sit right with me. She kept looking in the side mirror, her eyes wide and frightened, scanning the road behind us. After about 10 minutes, I asked her if she was okay. She turned to me and her expression had changed. The fear was still there, but now there was something else. Desperation, confusion. She said she needed to tell me the truth. She said the story about her boyfriend was not accurate. She said she had been taken, that a man had grabbed her from a gas station parking lot in Burlington 3 days ago, that he had kept her in a cabin somewhere in the woods, that she had managed to escape but did not know where the cabin was or how far she had run. She said she had been stumbling through the forest for hours before she found the highway. I felt my blood go cold. I asked her if she was sure if she needed me to call the police. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. She begged me not to call them yet, said they would not believe her, that they never believed girls like her. She said the police in Burlington had dismissed her concerns before, that she had reported feeling followed and they told her she was being paranoid. I did not know what to say. I reached for my CB radio to call for help, to alert other truckers and get the police involved. But before I could speak, the CB crackled to life. It was another trucker broadcasting a message about a missing person. A young woman last seen on Highway 20, blonde hair, early 20s. The description matched Caitlin exactly. The trucker said the police had been searching for her for 3 days, that her family was desperate for information. I looked at Caitlin and she was crying harder now, her whole body shaking. She told me more of the story. She said the man who took her had kept her in a small cabin with no windows, that he had not hurt her yet but had talked constantly about the others, about how she was going to be number 7. She said he kept a journal where he wrote about his plans, that she had seen photographs of other women on a wall. Women who looked terrified, women she thought might be dead. It was then that I noticed the headlights behind us. A single vehicle maintaining the exact same distance, matching my speed. I had been driving for 10 minutes since picking up Caitlin, and the headlights had been there the entire time. Never getting closer, never falling back. I pointed it out to Caitlin. She turned to look and started hyperventilating. She said it was him, that he had found her, that he was going to take her back. I accelerated, pushing the truck faster than I should have on the icy road. The headlights behind us accelerated too, maintaining the same distance. My heart was pounding. I grabbed the CB radio and broadcast a message to any trucker within range. I said I was on Highway 20 eastbound, that I was being followed, that I had a missing person in my truck and needed help immediately. Several voices responded, other truckers, some ahead of me, some behind, all asking for my location and saying they were coming. The headlights behind us suddenly accelerated. A dark sedan pulled alongside my truck, matching my speed. I looked down at the driver, a middle-aged white man, bald with a completely blank expression on his face. He was staring up at us, not with anger or urgency, just a dead, emotionless stare. Caitlin screamed. I pushed the accelerator as far as it would go, the truck's engine roaring, but the sedan stayed with us. Then I heard the voices on the CB. 3 other truckers were ahead of me, forming a convoy. They told me to stay on the line, that they were slowing down to create a barrier. Within minutes, I saw their lights. 3 massive trucks, slowing down, spreading across both lanes, blocking the road. The sedan fell back. I pulled into the middle of the convoy, surrounded by the other trucks. The sedan exited the highway at the next off-ramp and disappeared. We pulled into a truck stop in Concrete, Washington, about 20 minutes later. The parking lot was lit up like daylight, and there were police cars waiting. Caitlin collapsed into the arms of one of the officers, sobbing. I gave my statement describing the sedan, the driver, the partial license plate I had managed to see. Caitlin gave her statement as well, describing the cabin, the man who had taken her, the things he had said about the others. The police launched an immediate investigation. Based on Caitlin's limited memory and the direction she had come from, they began searching the forested areas along Highway 20. It took 3 weeks, but they found the cabin. It was about 15 miles off the highway, accessible only by a rough logging road. Inside, they found evidence of multiple victims. Clothing, identification cards, personal belongings that matched 3 women who had been reported missing in Western Washington over the previous 5 years. They found DNA evidence linking the cabin to those women, and they found a journal, handwritten, detailing the abductions, the methods, the plans. The partial license plate I had seen led police to a man named Douglas Whitmore. He owned property near Highway 20, not far from where the cabin was located. He had no criminal record, no history of violence, nothing that would have raised suspicion. He worked as a surveyor, lived alone, kept to himself. When police went to arrest him, he was gone. He had fled sometime in the days after Caitlin escaped, probably realizing that she would lead authorities to him. A manhunt was launched. His photograph was circulated across the region, but there were no confirmed sightings. For 2 months, Douglas Whitmore was a ghost. Then, in late January of 2016, police in Montana received a call about a body found in a motel room in Billings. It was Douglas Whitmore. He had died by suicide, a single gunshot wound to the head. Next to his body was a handwritten note, a confession detailing 5 murders. He described how he had abducted the women, what he had done to them, where he had left their bodies. 2 of the victims have never been recovered. Caitlin Reed identified Douglas Whitmore from his photograph as the man who had taken her. She was the only one who escaped, the only one who survived. I stayed in contact with her family after that night, checking in occasionally to see how she was doing. Her recovery was long and difficult, but she did recover. She went back to school, graduated with a degree in psychology, got married, had children. She sent me photographs sometimes, updates about her life. She told me once that she thought about that night on Highway 20 every single day, that she still could not believe she had survived, that she carried the weight of knowing that 5 other women had not been as fortunate. But she also said she was grateful, that she had been given a second chance at life, and she was determined to make it mean something. I still drive Highway 20. I still make that same run across the North Cascades, usually late at night, usually alone. But I cannot pass the spot where I picked up Caitlin without thinking about what happened, about how close she came to being victim number 7. I keep a photograph she sent me taped to my dashboard. It is a picture of her at her wedding, smiling, surrounded by family, alive and free. I look at that photograph whenever I drive that stretch of highway, and I think about timing, about the fact that I happened to be on that road at that exact moment, about the decision I made to stop even though it went against company policy. I think about the convoy of truckers who came to help without hesitation, about the way strangers can come together to protect someone in danger. And I think about the evil that hides in plain sight, the predators who live among us, who look like ordinary people, who drive ordinary cars, who work ordinary jobs. Douglas Whitmore is dead, but I know there are others like him out there. And I know that the next time I see someone stranded on a dark highway, I will stop again. Because sometimes stopping is the difference between life and death.